Today on Inside Utah Politics, the race to run Utah's capital city. Salt Lake City Mayor Jackie Biskupski is not seeking a second term, and 8 candidates are lining up to take over. Starting today and for the next few weeks, we're introducing you to all of them.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Good Sunday morning, and thanks so much for joining us for Inside Utah Politics. I'm Glenn Mills. There's an open seat for mayor in Salt Lake City, and it's drawing a crowded field. 8 candidates are in the running. Here's a look at the list. Jim Dabakis, Luz Escamilla, Stan Penfold, David Garbett, Erin Mendenhall, David Ibarra, Richard Goldberger, and Rainer Huck. For the next 3 shows, we are sitting down with all of the candidates to discuss the big issues. And we begin with the candidate who is topping the polls at this moment, former state senator Jim Dabakis. Jim, you're a guest continually here on the show, but kind of a different format this time around.
Different role.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Let's get into this. First off, talk about your background and why you feel like it qualifies you to run Utah's capital city.
You know, a lot of people see me as a bombastic, sometimes bloviating senator. I represented 100,000 people in Salt Lake, and that was my job. You know, the legislature comes down with a lot of bad stuff on Medicaid expansion and so many things. That was my job. The job of mayor is a different job. It is the person who brings everybody together, the person who doesn't really create enemies, the person who is there with a plan. But the first step, I think the first speed bump of being mayor is, this is a $330 million corporation. So can that person run that kind of business? And what people don't know about me is I got here as a kid, worked as a volunteer, as an intern at a radio station, and ended up learning everything there is about the radio business. And by the time I left, I was a partner in a small chain that we sold. Then with my husband, we packed off and headed to the Soviet Union, where we started a business and some entrepreneurial things, and I know business. I mean, people don't see me that way, but I know spreadsheets. I know what it's like to wake up in the middle of the night and pace around going, how am I going to make payroll the next day? I think that's important because this is a big business.
It's also important to have a good relationship with the legislature. You brought it up yourself about your reputation up there. Do you still have a good relationship that will benefit the city when you need it when it comes to the legislature?
So we're going to talk about some issues, no doubt, here in a minute. But Salt Lake City needs to understand that we're an island. There's 200,000 of us. And if we're going to succeed on all the issues, from homelessness to air quality to affordable housing, we need the support of the governor, of the president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House. We've got to be able to present our case, and the mayor has to be able to pick up the phone and call and say, you got to help me out here. And I believe that for all of my fieriness on the Senate floor, I believe this is true. There isn't one senator that I don't consider a friend. I was always able to separate that out, and they teased me a lot, and I think that's a good thing.
Let's get into some issues. What do you see as the biggest challenge for Salt Lake City over the next 4 years?
Okay, we've talked about that a little bit, but I think first the mayor's got to communicate with the city council. So I intend to spend 2 days a month at an overnight sleep with every member of the city council. You know, I understand Charlalika has a big basement. I'm looking at a cot for Anna's place. You can't do anything as mayor if you don't have 4 of those city council people. So you start there and you build out. And can I just say something I'm proud about? Whoever is going to be the next governor, I think I'm going to have a great relationship with. If you start with Spencer Cox, I texted Spencer, I called him and I said, our LGBT community has had a tragedy in Orlando. Will you come and speak? And he texted right back and said, Jim, I'll be there. And he gave the most eloquent speech, which has millions and millions. Thomas Wright, who is the Republican Party chair, when I was the Democratic Party chair, we went around this state to debates together, got out of the same car. We're friends. We continue to be friends. Greg Hughes, heaven forbid.
Yeah,
Greg
we've
is
seen
governor.
the two of you on this show a couple times.
We work together. John Huntsman, I called John one time and said, look, the Equality Dinner speaker didn't make it. Will you be the first major Republican? I'm saying, I know these people, and the city needs to understand we got to work together to solve the issues.
Okay, let's get into some hot button issues in Salt Lake City. Inland Port, do you support the lawsuit?
Support the lawsuit. This is a junta takeover. They've fired the mayor and the city council, and they have put in 13 people, 12 of whom don't share the city's values, to fill almost 20% of our city with a lot of things that don't share the values of the city. Keep it up.
Immigration. Salt Lake City Police and the current mayor have made it very clear that they will not enforce immigration policy in the city. Your thoughts?
To take families that have been here for years and who are contributing and to pack them up and ship them off immediately that day is soulless, and I will do everything in my power to not allow that to happen to people in our Salt Lake community.
Some people will look at that, though, and say, how can you as a mayor say you will not enforce federal policy?
Because the people of the federal government didn't elect me, the people of Salt Lake City did, and I know where the heart of the people of Salt Lake is, and that is not in taking children and rounding them up and putting them in concentration camps and shipping them off. This is not going to happen.
Homelessness. Do you support what happened with Operation Rio Grande and the resource centers moving forward?
Yes, of course. I mean, it gives me great hope. This is kind of the best of our community. If you've been to Seattle or San Francisco or parts of LA where they simply have given up on homelessness, where people are defecating on the street, where there's camps everywhere, we need to help our homeless brothers and sisters. And when I see a table, and around that table is the governor and the lieutenant governor and the Speaker of the House and $100 million from the city and the county mayor and our philanthropic community. Gail Miller put $10 million in, the Huntsman family, and then our great nonprofits. I say, do we have all the answers? No. But do we have a community that's sitting around the table solving it? The mayor's job, keep that community talking. Don't let the state kind of wander. We need to work together. We need a village.
Okay, 30 seconds left. Managing growth. A lot of people come into Utah. It's the capital city. We're having trouble with our housing market. What's the best way to manage growth? 30 seconds.
Yeah, the best way to manage growth is a great plan in transit. You know, we need free UTA all over the system. It's only 11% of the total cost that comes in, and management, that will mean so many more, less cars on the street, good for pollution, and also it's it can be done.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up there. You can learn more about Jim at dabakisformayor.com. You see it right there on your screen. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be following the race. Appreciate
Thanks,
having
Glenn.
you here.
Thanks for having me on.
Stay with us after the break. We're checking in with Erin Mendenhall. Welcome back. We turn now to Salt Lake City Councilwoman Erin Mendenhall. Erin, welcome to Inside Utah Politics. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me with you.
You bet. A very important race, so we're interested to hear from all the candidates. Let's start off with background. Talk about what you've done through your personal life, through your career that you believe qualifies you for this position.
Yeah, I'm the only candidate in this race that has a background in air quality and actual governance in the city experience. I've been a city councilwoman for two terms now. I chair our state air quality board. I'm a co-founder of an air quality nonprofit, and I've been in City Hall 6 years. I've watched opportunities sail through our city, And it's time for us to get proactive in addressing some long-standing issues like our infrastructure, air quality, affordable housing. I've been working on that for a long time as a city councilwoman, and I'm ready to do it.
We will get into more of those issues in depth in a little bit, but first, what do you see as the biggest challenge for leading Utah's capital city over the next 4 years?
I think that's why this race is so important, actually, Glenn, because one of the biggest issues, if not the biggest issue, is our crumbling infrastructure. It's something that every city has to take care of. So how do you pay for it? Well, last year when I was the chair of the council, we did some big steps financially in funding more maintenance and a bond to repair the worst roads in the system. But the truth is we have a long road ahead of us in order to really move the needle on that. So we need to stop returning impact fees. At this point, Jackie's administration has returned $3.2 million in impact fees back to developers because they didn't come up with a plan for how to spend them. That ends with my administration. And there's tens of millions of dollars of federal grants out there that we are eligible for as a city, and we need to more aggressively pursue those grants. There's new county transportation dollars on the table. We need to be going after those because our revenue as a city, our tax dollars can't be the only fuel that is moving this city forward. So I think addressing infrastructure is a really good example because it's going to take some technical skill and some political know-how of city politics and how cities work to really make a difference.
So when you talk about that money and impact fees, how would you specifically put that to use in addressing infrastructure?
So the state actually stipulates how you can collect and spend impact fees, and the critical missing piece here is an impact fee facility plan that the state requires for cities to be able to say, this is what we've recognized as growth, and here's what makes it legal for us to spend those impact fees. Because this administration has failed to update that plan, we have had impact fees expire and literally cut checks back to developers that were intended to pay for growth.
Let's move into some of the big issues facing the city. In addition to that, just kind of a little rapid fire response here to touch base on these. Let's start with the inland port. You're all too familiar with this. You played a major role in negotiating with the city and the state. But start off with the lawsuit. If you were elected mayor, would you continue this lawsuit?
Absolutely, I would. Historically, when Salt Lake City goes to bat and sues the state, we get bloodied. But in this case, we're talking about almost 20% of Salt Lake City's land. It's the most developable land that we have, and it's where our future tax increment is potentially the strongest. For us to lose all of that tax increment is an incredible bottom line that will be shouldered by the residents of Salt Lake City. So it's worth the courts deciding not whether or not an inland port is happening. That's not what this litigation is asking. It's asking who gets the tax dollars and who has the ultimate land use control. And I think that belongs in the city.
You and the mayor, you being the council, and the mayor, I believe you were the chair at the time, took completely different approaches to this. Do you stand behind the approach the council took, and why?
Hands down, I absolutely do. The reason is it's the job of a city's elected leaders to keep that city's voice at the table no matter what the setting is. When the mayor walked away from negotiations with the governor, she burned that bridge, basically. I turned around, rebuilt that bridge with the state because otherwise we were letting the state of Utah make decisions that the city should have been making for its residents. I was able to restore payment for public services in that area, get 10% for affordable housing, and get some environmental protections. But that inland port conversation is so far from over. We have to have our voice in that conversation.
Let's move to immigration, a huge issue right now. We're talking about threatened raids all across the country. The current administration and the police department have both said they will not enforce immigration policy on the federal level here. Do you believe that's the right move?
I do. I do. Salt Lake City is a safe place. It's a safe place for immigrants and refugees. It has been for decades. We should continue that. And I think what we've been seeing happen at the borders, families being separated from their kids, no humanity afforded them. It's wrong. And Salt Lake City should be a safe place for our immigrants.
Some people may look at that and say it's a slippery slope when you start to say, I will not, as an elected official, enforce federal policy. Any thoughts on that?
You're asking me at this point in time, that's where I stand today. Federal policy is changing. Our administration may be changing next year. And looking down the pipeline, we'll have to move and react that way accordingly. But I think that Salt Lake City being a safe place for immigrants is a consistent value of Salt Lake City, and I don't see that changing.
Homelessness. Do you support what happened with Operation Rio Grande and the city's role moving forward with these resource centers?
So what happened with Operation Rio Grande was in some ways quite appropriate, because this isn't a Salt Lake City only issue. This is a statewide issue, and we are the capital city where the majority of services are located. And in many ways it was wonderful to finally have the state step in and play a major role in funding and helping us address a homelessness issue that is not Salt Lake City's alone. Going forward, we have 2 new homeless resource centers opening, and I'm proud to have championed the first only women's shelter in Salt Lake City, this new homeless resource center. But when the road home closes, it could compromise the safety and a place to sleep for hundreds of people. So we need to be working with the county and the state to create an emergency winter shelter.
Because you mentioned this at the top of the interview, I want to get into air quality. What is the mayor's role in making sure we all have clean air to breathe?
I think there is no higher responsibility of a city leader than keeping people safe. And there are times in every year when our air quality is not safe. So public safety is its own conversation, but air quality is the #1 issue of our residents. That's why I'm in politics. It's how I came to public service. It's why I chair our state air quality board today. It's why I got a master's in science and technology, so I could better understand the policy workings around it. The mayor has contracting authority where she can execute business contracts and on behalf of the city. Every contract that we're entering into to help support a new building growing in the city, we need to raise those environmental standards. That's something a mayor can actually do. We need to grow our bus network. We need to grow our electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We should get that exchange program that the state's doing that trades out dirty lawnmowers and snow blowers for electric units. We should do that here in Salt Lake City too. There's a lot of things actually that a mayor can control, and I'll be all over that.
All right, we have run out of time. We do want to let our viewers know that they can find more information about you and your campaign at erinmendenhall.com.
That's right.
All
Thank you, Glenn.
Appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being here with us. But after the break, we are going to hear from Rainer Huck. Stay with us.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
All right, we wrap up our candidate profiles this week now with Rainer Huck. Rainer, great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's start off with your background. Tell us a little bit about you and what you feel like you have done to qualify yourself to be the mayor of Utah's capital city.
All right, I've lived in Salt Lake City for 70 years. I'm an immigrant from Germany. My parents came here from war-torn Europe to find a better life, which they did find. Salt Lake City has been very good to me. I love Salt Lake City. I attended the University of Utah, received a PhD in electrical engineering, and I've done extensive research in fundamental physics. I've been an advocate for public land access for handicapped people for many years, and I've been a real estate investor.
All right, let's talk about what you see as the biggest challenge in Salt Lake City over the next 4 years.
The biggest challenge, I believe, is to contain tax increases, to reduce user fees, particularly for water and sewer, and in general, reduce the tax, the burdens that government places on the working people of Salt Lake City. This is my constituency. These are the people that I'm addressing in my candidacy.
Why do you feel like you are the person that can accomplish those things?
Because very few of the other candidates are addressing these issues.
All right, I want to move on to a series of issues facing the city to get your thoughts on those. Let's start with the Inland Port. Do you support the lawsuit the city is currently in against the Inland Port?
Absolutely not.
Why is that?
I think that the Inland Port issue is one of these Trojan horse issues that just divert attention away from what's really important. And it doesn't affect the working people of Salt Lake City at all. And all it will do is divert their tax revenue, or their taxes, to a lawsuit that Salt Lake City is very unlikely to win. And no matter who wins it just doesn't do any good for the working people.
So moving forward, if you were elected, how would you handle the inland port situation?
The inland port situation is a state situation.
And you're okay with that?
I'm fine with that,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move on to immigration. We've heard from the national level, the president has said raids will be coming if significant reform does not happen. Salt Lake City has responded in saying that it will not enforce immigration policy. Do you stand by that?
Yes, I do not believe that we should be bothering people who are here, who are working and being productive. I think we've got a lot more important things to do than that. So I would be very much in agreement with the current mayor on that. We will not let our working people here be harassed.
Some might take that and say, though, should an elected official be saying that they will not enforce immigration policy? Or federal policy, I should say.
I think that's quite different from what's going on at the border right now. People who are here, living here, working here, should be left alone. And I believe that there should be a way found that they can be legalized and be integrated into society.
Homelessness. Do you support what happened with Operation Rio Grande?
Absolutely not. I think that was an outrage, something that should never happen in a free society. It was a police attack on our most vulnerable people. Here these people have practically nothing, and the police swoop down, arrest them, which I think was unconstitutional. What crimes had many of them committed, and arrest them, and then their belongings are strewn on Rio Grande.
So
I saw them. Wait a minute, let me finish. And then they come in with bulldozers and swoop up their few belongings and take them out to the dump. Now these people, when they got out of jail, have nothing at all.
So how would you handle that then?
Well, my solution is to build a fantastic, beautiful, homeless campus in the northwest quadrant that will supply every need of the homeless people.
And how are you going to pay for that?
Well, we'll find a way to pay for it because it'll be a lot less expensive than the current homeless shelters, which cost $60 million and will house only 700 people. They will be overloaded and overcrowded the day they are built, and the homeless population will still be living on the streets.
Air quality. What is the city's role in air quality and making sure we have clean air to breathe here in Utah?
Well, everybody loves clean air. The question is, how do we obtain it? There are certain geological factors in this valley that make it difficult during some times of the year to have clean air, no matter what we do, because there's such a large population now. I remember in the 1950s when everybody heated their houses with coal, and the snow would be black a day after it fell, and you wouldn't be able to see across the street. What fixed that problem? Technology. Natural gas came in and cleaned up the air, and it was very nice for many years, but now the population has gotten bigger. I believe that the air quality problem will be solved with the advent, which will be very soon now, of driverless electric cars.
Managing growth. Our city is growing, our state is growing. What is your plan to manage that type of growth that we are seeing, especially with the housing market? We're seeing housing prices skyrocket here.
Well, I don't know what can be done about that. What are you going to do about that? People like to live here. I don't think what they're doing currently is a great idea, building all these huge apartment complexes all over. But yeah, I don't know. What can you do about it?
I'm not the one running for mayor. That's why I'm asking you.
All right. I don't know.
Okay. Transportation. Big issue in the city. Your thoughts on transportation and where it needs to go in the next 4 years?
Yeah, I think any further investment in buses and tracks is a mistake because, again, I'm a big fan of the driverless electric cars. In 5 years...
Well, could you see that, mass transit? Driverless
yeah, it's a mass transit, but it's a much better mass transit because it takes people from portal to portal. Now you got to leave your home, get to a bus stop or get to a track station, then you go on that medium, the mass transit medium, then you have to find your way to your destination. The driverless electric cars will be as big a revolution as the automobile was in the first place. People will A lot of people won't even own cars anymore. You call it up like you do a Lyft or an Uber, and it takes you to where you go, and then it goes out and finds somebody else to give a ride to instead of having to find a parking place, and they create zero pollution.
All right, we're going to end it on that note. I do want to let our viewers know that they can get more information about you and your campaign and your philosophies at votehuck.com. You see that information on your screen as well. We'll be watching to see how this plays out. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Glenn.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. Here on this show, the next 2 weeks, we will continue the conversation with candidates for Salt Lake City mayor. Then those 8 will be narrowed down to 2 in the municipal primary that is set for Tuesday, August 13th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Just log on and search Glenn Mills ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your Sunday morning. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.